My guest today is Paul Burgess.
What I try to do is communicate in very simple terms to the general public the truth about net zero and what's going on in the world. And I've got about 150 videos now on my YouTube channel. And but also I do talks and campaigns. And so I'm going to be showing you the story of just what stops you, just what blocks you, just how difficult it is to get this message over to the public. And even when and I appear on national television quite a lot, the last one was 2 weeks ago. And so pretty regular, I'm on television on GB News, which is a national one, but even that is limited to, even GB News put 10 or 15 times the opposition on, as it were. But there's a story that is fascinating in particular here in the Isle of Man, and that's what I wanted to explain. Just to show you what's happened in the last 24 hours, a group in England tried to arrange a debate on net zero and the climate emergencies. And so they approached all the councils, which are like local area administrations, who've declared climate emergencies. And we've asked them to define a climate emergency. And they can't. And we point out, unless they can define it, how do they know when it's over? But then they tried to get a debate going on this, and they didn't say who it was on my side. So it's me and another person, 2.5 hours each and 2.5 hours in the other side, open to the public for questioning. So the difficulty now in getting anyone to debate, they kept my name secret because they said people would be scared. So they wanted to get the agreement of the other side first. And this is the sort of reply you get, and I'm reading this out. So this is the Green Party, leaders in the Green Party. I personally do not debate, is there a climate emergency? Debating facts just creates a false impression about what is scientific consensus. However, what we should do is tackle the climate. What should we do to tackle the climate emergency would be better. And then they then go on to point out that to give a balanced view, if there's 2 on my side, they need 16 on their side. Yes? And this is the total unscientific, total lacking in any understanding. And it's basically you're arguing with people who just accept things. So I've got a number of videos to show on this, and I think over the course of the 4 videos and chatting, I'll be able to explain the problems and where we are in Britain, because we're rapidly losing our freedom of speech. I mean, the Labour government had just gone to power, and one of the first things they did is cancel the freedom of speech in the universities law that was coming through, which basically says that a university can't decline. If they're being invited by members of the university to give a talk, they can't be cancelled without fining the university. Yes? So you are allowed that freedom of speech. That law is being cancelled now, that coming through law. So we are losing freedom of speech rapidly. Back in America, you've got a constitution that's written that's very hard to break, as it were, and you've got much more freedom of speech than we've got. So in a sense, we're leading in the ignorance campaign over you. And so no, we are. We are ahead of you in ignorance. And I think that this hour will demonstrate that perfectly.
I just wanted to double check this debate you're talking about. Is this related to the Rachel Matthews debate that she's talking about, or is this a different one? September 27? Or no, event on 12th of September.
Yeah, Rachel Matthews, yes. Rachel Matthews is the lady who tried to organize this. Okay. And she's tried everything. She's now going to Friends of the Earth. But I've said to her today, look, you're not going to get anyone to debate. They won't debate. And you'll see my attempts at debate coming up on videos I'll be showing. But you won't get them. And she said, well, they don't even know it's you, Paul. So, because if they know it's me, there's no chance. And so they say came up with a ridiculous thing. So it's Rachel Matthews who's trying very, very hard to get this organized and is tearing her hair out. She's going to Friends of the Earth next to try to get them. But if they see this, they'll know it's me. So that probably puts it to an end anyway.
Okay, what next here?
Right. Well, next, actually, to give you an intro to how we started to get into local communities. It's very hard to change government. It's very. I have met now a lot of ex-government ministers in the green room in the television studio, and I realize it's made me sad because they are ignorant unintelligent people. That's all I can say. And it just depressed me that these people have been in government. Yes. And so we try to get locally. Can we change things in one area? So this first video I'm going to call up now explains why our approach to what we were trying to do to get a lever in to begin to get a public understanding. So this is the video. Leeds is an area in the north of the UK, and it had, like many other councils in that area, these are local administrations in the UK, had declared a climate emergency, although they wouldn't define what it is. In fact, none of the councils in the UK know what it is. They just declare it and spend money. And in the case of Leeds, I think you're looking at apparently well over £100 million. So some ladies got together a group and tried to oppose it, and they worked with me. They contacted me, and we thought, yes, if we can change an area of the UK, if we can get one council to see sense in this, then we can maybe roll that out across the UK. So yeah, let's have a go at Leeds. And so we started to get the plan together, but we needed to advertise. And we came up with a really good logo. Here it is here, and a billboard. And so the idea was to get billboard advertising, and we thought we could raise the money to do that. However, the billboard people blocked us. And no matter which company we went to, we were blocked on the billboards. And then another hope came up that on the sides of our buses, our public transport, they have advertising. And so how about that then? When we contacted them that control that in Leeds, they said, no, we support net zero as a company. So apparently these days, therefore, by the way, we won't take your advertising. So these days, when they sell you ice cream, apparently they have to agree with the politics. And so, you can't have your ice cream unless your politics are right, because these people are just providing an advertising service. And providing the advertising is legal, it should be okay. But no matter where we turned, we found ourselves blocked in advertising, promoting the campaign. And we got a website, we started a website and everything, but we could not get that public advertising that was needed. And the idea was to get through to them. So then at that point, the Isle of Man contacted us. And the Isle of Man is a little island in the Irish Sea between Ireland and England. It's here. And this little island has a population of about 85,000 people. And it's an independent democracy with its own parliament. Not many people know that. I'd like to quote Michael Caine. So how about that? We could maybe get a bigger impact. And so the organisers, again, ladies, it seems to be ladies doing all this hard work, organised me to have a radio TV type appearance. I'd go to a school and have a debate in the local secondary school, to have an evening talk, a big evening talk in the capital there, to meet farmers, meet different groups, and have a number of interviews, actually. Really great. I could not get that in Britain. I could not get that time in Britain. I'm on television a lot in the UK, national television, but I'm only allowed minutes normally in a debate with somebody, and but literally sometimes 2 to 3 minutes, for which I travel, by the way, 14 hours because it's so powerful to the cause. I make no money out of anything I do. I actually subsidize it. So there we are with the Isle of Man now. There's a chance. Look, I've got the school thing arranged. I've got the TV type radio appearance arranged. I've got a 1 hour, a podcast arranged to go out on the radio, and so on. What could be better? So with all this organization behind me, we proceed towards the date, and they're advertising it on social media, etc. What happened next was incredible. First of all, the school got cancelled, and basically the government stepped in and cancelled it. That's the real truth of it. And the government, by the way, came there the day after my scheduled talk to give their version of their totally corrupt net zero plan, by the way. So that's where we are. And that is my intro to why the Isle of Man and what I'm trying to do there, along with people who organize themselves into a group called Powerman. And they may even have to do a political party on one issue to get the message through. But what happened here is really worth highlighting for everyone, because in effect, it's a microcosm of the problems in getting the message across to the public. And I do a lot of research, but I don't do any science anymore. And my background is hydroclimatology, and I was in charge of Wales for water resource planning, things like this. So I went into the climate work to forecast floods, droughts, all sorts of things. So, 1 in 1,000-year flood, what's the risk of this, and so on. So you have to be able to go into the climate, into the hydroclimatology to assess that. That's my background. So, so I came to the Isle of Man, and a lot of things happened. So that's the intro to this talk. It's not about science so much as psychology and politics, and the reality of the obstacles in the way of trying to get science over to the people. Any questions at all?
No, that is great stuff. That telling your story, totally loving it. You're fighting the good fight, and you're putting in what, 14-hour days?
Well, what it is, I live in a remote part of Britain, and to get to London is altogether it's 7 hours there and 7 hours back, and so it's a 14-hour day for me. And sometimes we get with the presenter and the opposite side and me, we get 8 minutes, between us all. And recently, though, I did manage a 30-minute one, but the first 15-minute was politics, which I hadn't done before because I try to stay out of the politics. I don't want to. The trouble is, you tend to go left and right with this issue of net zero, and you shouldn't be. It shouldn't be political. So I try to stay out so as not to alienate people, so that I have very strong views, and I'm following what's going on in America very closely, for example. But I don't get involved with politics in public because it just takes away from my work, and I'm pretty full time on this. Now, what happened then in this is prior to me arriving in the Isle of Man, a huge campaign started against me, and on Facebook and social media. I was called a Nazi. I was called far right. I was called racist. I was called everything. I also was told, I don't understand anything. I know nothing. Just a huge campaign. Now, when I started to follow this up, other people in Isle of Man who were helping me pointed out who these people were. The bleed one was the PR consultant to the wind farms. And the next one was involved. And the others were involved. There's 2 directors of a government quango called the Sustainability Centre, and I didn't realize, I honestly did not realize the level of ignorance or what I was going to expose when I got there. But this campaign really got going. And I think a number of traps were set for me. Can I just explain, by the way, I'm wearing glasses because I've got a bit of a problem with my left eye. I'm having to have surgery, so I don't want to distract people with it. Right, so the very first thing I did on the morning was a 1 hour on their Manx radio. Now, all the papers, our own newspapers, are owned by government. All the television radio station owned by government. There is one called Manx News, which does videos, and they produce videos, and they film my talk for that evening. But the day started with me and the Green Party leader. Now, in the Isle of Man, you only got 24 MPs. It's an independent democracy from Britain. They have their own laws and so on and so on. And at that stage, by the way, we had 1 MP being critical out of the 24. Yeah, I did move it to 4, by the way. So that was a bit of an improvement. But we start the day here with the next video. And the next video is me. And I'm just showing you, I can't show you it all, but maybe you can put links into these videos below. But this was a 1 hour talk where I was constantly attacked personally, really viciously attacked personally. Worse than that, I wasn't allowed to respond to the personal attacks. But what happened was I came away thinking, wow, why wasn't I allowed to respond? What was going on here? By the end of that day, by the way, with the very last interview that day from the government radio station, I realized they were trying to do gotcha moments. Yes, I was a bit slow, but if you stick to the truth and if you're honest, that's the biggest protection, yeah? So what you're going to see now is a video with the most ignorant person you can imagine, who had no knowledge or understanding. I mean, a video, she did a previous thing which said we should go for batteries to do the balancing. Yes. And the cost of the batteries, because we just had a battery farm put in Britain, 198 megawatt hour one. So I just took those costs, worked it out for what they need, and it comes to £3.5 billion. That's about almost $5 billion for a population of 85,000. It's totally untenable. But then you've got the sustainability people making podcasts against me and things, saying, well, it's £1 million for a 1 megawatt hour. We can do a lot with a 1 megawatt hour. And when I point out that it's only 2 minutes you get, it's only 2 minutes. It's not people. I was involved in pump storage in the past, and the biggest pump storage scheme at the time in Europe, but maybe bigger now somewhere else, is 9.1. They've just extended it sometimes to 10 megawatt hours. They can get, but that's for balancing when a football match finishes and everyone goes to make tea. We make tea in Britain, and it puts a big load onto the grid. And so to do that little blip, perfect. And in 3 seconds they can be putting a few gigawatts in. Perfect. It's not load balancing. It's touches at the edges. It doesn't cover the fact that this year on wind is 20% than last year. Yeah. So what I will show you now is how the day started for me. And I think the intention was to really pulverize me. But it turned out that 99% of the comments below this were on my side. And it turned out that, well, you'll see anyway, and you'll see, because it was summed up by one comment that said the Green Party has been put back 20 years in the Isle of Man. So everything was backfiring on the plan, but it's quite funny. So here is the second video of me against the Green Party leader, and the sort of tactics. It's just a small clip. The sort of tactics on that. But in this, I'd found out now about the mathematical problem they'd made. The entire basis of their plan was impossible. And it's not a matter of opinion. It's so extremely wrong. And I'd found that out before I came that morning. So here it is. There's that number 2 video. Whilst the school debate was cancelled before I got there, and very disappointing, of course, what I didn't expect was the amount of really hatred directed towards me by the people. Here's a typical Facebook post, but I was called racist and so on. I was very near a Nazi to some people, apparently. And these Facebook posts that were coming in were from, one of them there was from the advisor. He's the PR consultant to the wind farm industry. And in fact, all the leading ones of these, except for one, basically were connected with the project. And they were coming at me without any mercy. But I also think some traps were planned, which I'll go into now. Well, they did succeed, as I've stated, in cancelling one thing, the school debate, but they did then try to cancel me speaking at the hall, to get the hall to not allow me, because I'm at this extreme far-right, almost Nazi. By the way, I don't belong to any political party, and what they're referring to is I was previously a spokesman and sat for a party on the environment, and I sat on a multiracial committee doing that. But that's it. That's it. And but they were more concerned in cancelling me, not and covering up what's going on, because I was about to uncover huge mistakes in their calculations. But you'll see about that in a minute. But the very first morning of my action day, as it were, after I'd arrived in the afternoon the previous day, was a radio event, which was for an hour, on a debate with the Green Party leader for the Isle of Man. And the Isle of Man has 24 MPs in effect, and that's it. And so it's a really small 85,000 population, like a small town in Britain. But this is why I'm getting such exposure in relation to the size that I can't get in the UK, even though I'm on national television there. So that was the idea, and I really look forward to the Green Party lady debating with her. She's the leader of the only party, as I understand it, on the Isle of Man. So there we are, and this is what happened.
Fast to buy. Good afternoon. Welcome to Man and Line on Manx Radio. We're looking at renewable energy today and also finding out about the Isle of Man Green Party. Leader Lamara Crane is here, elected Commissioner in Ramsey, of course. And Paul Burgess is giving a talk this evening at the Legion on Market Hill in Douglas. Paul's got many videos out on the web, on YouTube, and has talked at length about his views on renewable energy, and also there's one particularly for the Isle of Man. So, Faster Mike, good afternoon, Paul. Hi, Lamara.
Hi.
Okay. First of all, Paul, how come you've come to the Isle of Man today? I mean, you've got a talk tonight. What brings you to the Isle of Man?
I was invited to the Isle of Man by concerned residents. They asked me to look at the energy policy and what's going on here. And they're concerned about the possible consequences of what's happening in the Isle of Man. And frankly, it's a good job they did, because I have uncovered fundamental mistake in all the mathematics. Besides the whole energy policy, I'm afraid, is based on incorrect calculations.
Okay, and this is the report by, it was a report that they're taking those from, isn't it?
Yes, they're taking a pathway, and in the pathway they have a performance record, a performance yield from the wind farm, 3 times, up to 300% more than anyone else in the world. Scotland, more than 3 times that. And there was even a report done in 2010 for the Isle of Man government, and it's 3 times that as well, or 4 times that almost. So these figures that you've got for yield are completely incorrect. And it's so simple, the mathematics. I could explain this on the radio to people. It's that simple.
Okay, well, hopefully you will. Lamara Crane is here from the Green Party, and obviously the Isle of Man Green Party has its own, local action, global change. It was founded, 2016, I think, the Green Party over here. Is the Green Party behind the government's sustainable energy policy here?
Definitely. We are delighted that the government is pursuing the net zero programme, and we very much hope that it's going to be delivered. We are concerned that there is rhetoric out there that is based on incorrect information. It's not factual, it's not up to date, and also that purported expertise is being given when actually there is none to actually back that up. There is reports out from Manx Radio that state that Mr. Paul Burgess is a climate scientist. I'm not a climate scientist. I've never published a paper in a scientific journal that is, trusted and reliable and scientifically proved, and neither has Mr. Paul Burgess. So I just want to make sure that everybody is aware that he's neither a renewable energy expert nor a climate scientist.
You've been doing this for years.
I've been doing this, yes. And I've sat on government quangos representing Wales. I've had government quangos closed down because they had incorrect information, right? I've had a whole, in one instance, I had 20 man-years work scrapped in 5 minutes because I exposed the mathematical incorrections in it. And that's the message I've got for the Isle of Man today. What Lamala just did was a personal attack, which is totally unjustified. But let me tell you something. In science, who you are appeals to authority don't matter. Try it on Einstein. 100 scientists wrote a book against him, appeared in papers. He was a clerk in an office. He was right, they were wrong. It's only people who don't understand science can make remarks that were made here as the opening remark, because it's totally unreasonable. There are 2 things you can't do in science. One is appeals to authority. That's like saying, my God's better than your God. It has no meaning. I will present you now with the figures and the facts of why the Isle of Man whole basis of what Lamara is saying is incorrect. And it's simple mathematics. I've got it on a piece of paper here. I'll hand you it. We can expose it. And it's simple. It couldn't be simpler. It only requires some multiplication and division.
Okay.
Nothing complicated.
Okay, well, I don't want a piece of paper. If you could explain it to the listener, that would be great.
That's fine.
What's the...
Let me explain it. Right. When you have a wind turbine, there's an optimum level that they'll publish with the wind turbine, right? So let's assume it's 100. Let's just take a figure of 100%. Now, when you subject the wind, you're not going to hold 100% for the whole year. So in this case, we've got 20 megawatts of wind going in, yeah? So if you want to know what the theoretical limit is, you multiply 20 by 24 hours by 365. That's the total amount in of energy in megawatt hours you can have in the year. But it's theoretical. It has no meaning. Yes? So what do we actually get? And that is the load factor. So what do we actually get out of it? Now, the load factors that are published by the UK government for Scotland, which is the windiest part, is 28.4%, which is perfectly reasonable. There's a reason for that I can explain, because as the wind drops, it actually drops very quickly. So if you drop the wind by half, you actually reduce it eightfold. If you drop the wind even by 10%, you reduce it massively. So as soon as the wind drops away, because it's to the velocity to the power of 3, and I explain how to work it out in your phone now if anyone wanted to know, it drops away. Now, what you do is you take wind measurements with a machine, and you, over 5 years typically, by the way, and you can use different methods. Here they're using a sonar, and here they took the wind measurements in the winter, which is ridiculous. You can't do that. You've got to take it over the year. Now, the government in the UK published Scotland average 28.4. I will now read out some of the Scottish ones here. These are the top Scottish sites. And these are the load factors: 28.2, 28.4, 29.3, 23.8. But let's go into the Isle of Man. The Isle of Man in 2010 commissioned a report. And it looked at 10 or so places all around the Isle of Man. What could we get out of them? What load factors? And you know what they were in 2010 report? And I can give the link now. It's a very simple link. I could even put over the phone. You can look up the report. And the load factors varied where they looked between 19 and 31%. The average was 25%. Do you know what load factors you've now got in the Isle of Man? They're impossible. No one in the world has them. 57%, 74%, and 85%. Your costs are out by 200 to 300%, as is everything else. You've also missed out a loss of costs. Now, what I'm saying is so simple and basic, and I'll expose it tonight in full. It is so simple and basic that there's no doubt what I'm going to say now. The Isle of Man government, on simple mathematics, has to stop this whole programme and think again.
Turbines political, not just for electricity.
Well, I think that wind turbines are for electricity, but obviously it's a political decision whether wind turbines are built because it's the government that's building them. So, yeah, talking about political parties, I'm here as a representative of the Isle of Man Green Party. I'm aware that For Britain is a political movement in the UK, which it appears Mr. Burgess has spoke about and has actually done talks for. And if you would like to confirm that you are a spokesperson and a committee member, because this party, excuse me, I have not finished. This political party is an anti-Islam and counter-jihad activist party,
Okay.
and which Mr. Paul Burgess has spoken about. And I haven't finished. Sorry,
we are here to talk about wind turbines.
Yes, but I have been brought here. I've been brought here as a political representative of my party. Now, it's only fair to identify the members that are speaking and whether he represents a political party or not. Now, I think that's only right. And for him to say that I'm attacking him personally is not incorrect. I am identifying his expertise in renewable energy and climate science, which is non-existent. So we do need to identify that. So we need to make sure that that isn't pervaded to our society, and that they understand that he is not an expert on this matter. Also, the data that he has is actually completely out of date. The data shows that 45% up to 50% load factor can be achieved based on where the wind turbines are. So all of his calculations are out. Then based on out-of-date information, current information is out there. It's quite easy to find. I'm happy as the Isle of Man Green Party to actually share that information, but it is available. The only thing that is also unfortunately available is YouTube videos, which don't show up-to-date data.
Well, those personal attacks continued for the whole hour. And actually, the person there didn't allow me to respond to them. And I would have responded to them, obviously, but I wasn't allowed to. And nevertheless, it turned out really well for the cause, because the population of the Isle of Man completely condemned her. And 99% of the comments were on my side. And in fact, one comment really summed it up. She's put the Green Party in the Isle of Man back 20 years. And of course, even the figures she was quoting, which were wrong, by the way, they're really wrong. This is onshore wind we're talking about. And we're onshore wind with just 150-meter high turbines that are actually only 15 meters above the tree line, putting them in the forest. It's unbelievable. And I was quoting 27% as a reasonable figure, whilst they're quoting up to 85. It turned out later that the 85 was for a bigger farm that they just misled the public on. So the real figures are between 58 and 74%. And these figures are just not obtainable onshore. And so they're claiming somehow the Isle of Man is magic. And there's a whole pile of follow-ons to this, where experts come on who they're paid for by the Isle of Man government to support them on a totally absurd basis. So I do videos to counter them, and I counter them in detail. So that gives you a flavour of the day, how the day started, and the nature. And that lady really, the funny part is, as we're doing this podcast, she's back on that programme, and it's actually been cancelled, and they put someone else in her place, because 99%, in fact, I think there was only one comment in support who was a friend of hers, and everyone else just decimated her. And she really is ignorant. And her argument is that the turbine efficiency has trebled. It hasn't. It's slightly improved the turbine. What the big factor is in turbines is the height of them, to get more towards a laminar flow and away from the turbulence of the ground. And so we're talking onshore here. And I'd like to, if you could bring up image 1, I've only got the one image, and it's the Scottish wind farms, which is the windiest part of the UK. There we are. Now, if you look at that, you'll see that the actual fact, the top one there's no particular order to these, 28.2% load factor. And you can go down the load factors there. The average actually of that lot at that point is 26.85%. Isle of Man are claiming up to 3 times that, 74%. Yeah? And there's another point I want to make here. If you look at the top one, it says gigawatt hours generated 111, gigawatt hour constraints 116, discarded 51%. Now, in the UK, the wind farms get paid for every kilowatt hour they can produce, even if we don't need it. So in this case, 51% of the time, that wind farm was paid to shut off. This is really important. The wind farm was paid not to give us the power. And a particular accountant's report later did reveal they're exaggerating the figure they should be paid when they switch off, but that's a separate issue. Now, as you go down there, the next one's 48%, 47%, 39%. In actual fact, they are ranked in order of that. So immediately that doubles your cost before you go any further. And the reason is twofold. The reason is, in this case, they haven't built a distribution system to get into the grid. And so they can't take it. But there's another big factor, because we are quadrupling offshore and doubling onshore. And that's going to, our overnight level in the UK is around about roughly 25 gigawatts. And they're now going to 90. And so overnight, if we got a windy time, we can have, say, let's be reasonable, 70 or 80 gigawatts being produced. But we can only use 25 because we can't store it. So we have to pay treble the price for the wind. And this is what's happening now in Britain. So I've made videos to expose the government plan, which everyone is forgetting. And I use simple graphics to show how this rises, as it were. Yeah. So, that's where we are with that. And this is so ridiculous, their claims, that no one. So for sanity, we did contract a professor who doesn't want to be named because he doesn't want all the stuff I get, but he is a consultant to the wind farm industry, and he put that particular one in the Isle of Man at 33%, assuming it's a 200-meter high wind turbine. But it isn't, it's 150. And on top of that, it's in a forest, so you've only got about 50 to 20 meters clearance above the trees. So the turbulence and so on effect there is enormous. And so he said it's about worth, the extra 50 meters is about 5%, because height does matter with a wind farm. And that makes it 28%. Now we're saying 27. My guess was 27. And I'd accept 30. I'd accept. So it's not exact. But they just took one winter from September to March figures and used that. They didn't even allow for the seasonal factors, let alone the fact that, and you can see it from that table there, the wind generated varied there between those 2 years, 20 and 21, by 20%. So any storage for a system would have to cope with enormous figures. And in the case of the UK, for example, to cope with our 9 days we had in 2018 without any wind, that would be £3.5 trillion, which is totally unaffordable. You have to do that every 10 or 12 years. So, I mean, these are simple things. This isn't science. This is simple common sense stuff. And this, the Isle of Man. So I thought they'd say, well, we need to look at this. Oh no. What happened was complete blanket. So I have to listen to programs there they put out where they're discussing, could use batteries. Oh yeah, and a 1 megawatt battery is going to cost us £1 million. And can be used for balancing. Oh yeah. So I have to do a video saying you'll get 1 minute 30 seconds out of it. It doesn't balance anything. And they're pretending that this 1 megawatt, and this, it's like dealing with children. That particular lady there, the green lady, is just like dealing with a child. You couldn't get any serious discussion going. So I hope that night I'll be getting, it was a whole number of meetings and other interviews that day. So just to go to the next subject, why I'm showing you video 3 is to show you the work I do, which is how can I simplify as much as possible William Happer's work. Yeah. So this is that video, and it's just an explanation of how I present things. So that previous session with the Green Party leader, I had another 1 hour podcast which went out on radio a week or two later and so on. But the big build-up out, I met a number of people, did another interview with Banks News, and then what we were building up to was the evening talk. And it was a very good turnout. I mean, for the Isle of Man, it was a big turnout, much bigger than the talks they had explaining the wind farm coming. I had about going on 175, 170 people or so. So it was a good talk, but it went on for 3 hours because it was interactive. So I do a little section, interactive, intersection, and so on. And I'm going to give you some on the talk with comments to give you a feel for it. Because what was going to follow after the talk was a complete trap, which I'll play the entire interview of. But it was a trap set for me, which I didn't realize until afterwards. But let me give you some clips from the talk. And what I'll start with, actually, I explained all the problem with the wind turbines, which they're claiming world record. They're claiming load factors that are, for an onshore wind farm, 150-meter high wind turbines just above the forest, as it were, totally impossible. Totally. Up to, actually, for the 20 megawatts, they're claiming up to 74% load factor. And they won't listen to anything else. It's like someone going down a tunnel, and I know they're wrong. So we're going to keep on pushing on that. But here are some clips anyway. And the first clip I'll play is my job, really. I try to explain science and the whole thing on the technology and the science to the public. So I'll give you a bit of science now on William Happer's work. And so, I mean, most people watching this will be familiar with the radiation transfer model and William Happer's work. And this is how I go about explaining it. So they're just simple clips trying to get the science over to the public. And that is part of my talk.
Behave to cause global warming, in effect, to keep us warmer than would otherwise be the case. We'll call this little chap here our CO2 molecule. Now, the CO2 molecule, with most frequencies of radiation coming from Earth, most frequencies of infrared, does nothing. The radiation passes right the way through it. It has no effect at all. But at certain frequencies, it becomes excited, gets very excited, dances around, captures the infrared for a tiny, tiny amount of time, and then expels it off in all directions. But by expelling it off in all directions, it's sending half of it back to Earth, and that reduces the radiation loss to space. So what is called the greenhouse effect is simply a reduction in the infrared radiation we lose to space. Now, our CO2 molecule, I'm going to pause This is so important. This is the infrared spectrum. This is the infrared heat leaving Earth. This is what goes off into space. And this red curve is no atmosphere at all. Right? But we do have atmosphere. And we have CO2. So what does the CO2 do to warm us, is the question. Right? And so here, we've got very little radiation going. It doesn't have an opportunity. But when it gets to 500 or 600, wow, there's a lot of heat can escape. Right? What does CO2 do? I'm going to deal with CO2 and methane. The work deals with 5, but the rest is so insignificant. Right? But we're going to do CO2 first. And just to put your mind at ease, this part I'm showing you, the scientists on the other side agree. Right? At these higher frequencies here, 2000 or so, does nothing. It doesn't do anything to stop the heat loss to space. But as we move along, 1500, still nothing, 1000, still nothing. But when we get to about the 600s, wow, it really is effective. So the CO2 molecule dancing sends half the radiation it grabs back to Earth and then puts a hole in that red curve. Okay, so we've seen how the CO2 molecule gets excited and grabs that radiation to send it back to Earth, therefore reducing the loss to space and warming the Earth. And it's an incredible global warming molecule. It really is. But it's not alone. And there's an elephant in the room. And the elephant in the room is water vapor. Now, water vapor is invisible, by the way, and it's right the way across the range. So now we're going to introduce water vapor with a few other greenhouse gases, and you can see the effect overall of what's being reduced going to space. So let's, at the click of a finger, add water vapor and a few of the other greenhouse gases. So there we have the effect of all the greenhouse gases on the atmosphere. And we'll flick between what normally goes into space without any of them and what actually goes into space after we apply them. So now changing the greenhouse effect. So far, CO2 warms the planet. Fact. Right? It does it by reducing the radiation that's going into space and sending it back to Earth. Fact. Right? So people who say it's only 420 parts per million or everything can't have it, that's rubbish. They're wrong. I've got people on my side who don't understand this, and there are people on the other side who don't understand this. But the real scientists, the real people understand it. This curve is called the Stefan Boltzmann curve, and the curve actually was created at the beginning of the 1900s, but they couldn't get it right. So people had to work on it, and it caused the creation of quantum physics. So the birth of quantum physics came from this work. This work's done with quantum physics, by the way, but I'm trying to explain it with robots. Because you don't have to understand how, because you'll see why you don't have to understand how in a second. So now we've got this shape going off, okay? And going off into space. The heat that's retained because of it back to Earth, we're changing that to green. The green is the greenhouse effect. Whilst all this is fine in theory, in science, the theory has to match observation. It has to be proven to be right by looking in the real world and saying, is this what the satellite is measuring? So now we're going to look at 3 points on Earth. This is really important. Remember my rules, right? The leading scientists in the world, these are 3 times advisor to 3 USA presidents, yeah? Backed up by Nobel Prize winners and so on, and not disputed on the other side, this part. Not disputed on the other side. And why they can't dispute is coming up. The measurements. Now, what is the shape of the curve leaving Earth that the satellite tells us? Yeah? Measured by the satellite and calculated by the work I've just shown you. The curves are different in each place because all this is without clouds. There's no clouds in all the measurements. But there's no theory can be applied anywhere in the world. And the 3 areas we're taking are the Sahara, the Mediterranean, and the Antarctic. So let's look at what the satellites showed us. Taking a look at the Sahara Desert first, on the left is the theory, and on the right is what the satellites observed. Let's just check that observation against the theory, and I'm going to bring that image across to match it. The matching is remarkable. This is
many subjects, the science and all about the weather, about UK whether about the way they misuse data, the whole lot. But that's why it took 3 hours and 10 minutes. But it had a whole pile of interactions with the public with it. And one particular gentleman was a member of the equivalent, the second house. I think because we called your senator, I was getting mixed up which is which. And he was a member that's appointed by the other members, actually, they're not voted in. And he had been trained in the USA by the Al Gore School, apparently. And so no matter what I could do, I couldn't get him to discuss things sensibly. So I'll give you an idea of what you come up against at these public meetings now when someone is so rooted in this. And I'm going to use the example of the Tony Heller curve, where we take the CO2 curve with all the conferences on it. So I showed the Tony Heller curve and explained that all the conferences don't make any difference to it. That was the point, nothing else. Just look at this interchange.
All the big conferences where they fly 400 or 500 private jets in, yes, they are pushing on it. And the debate held on this. And the other side agreed there made no difference at all. So they should do it by Zoom. And then there's some difference. Or what? It's hot air. It doesn't make any difference. So no matter what you do, makes no difference at all.
But the other graph you showed, and this is the more serious question, really, and it ties in with the quote that you had on at the very, very, very start about the 40th of a millionth or whatever, and you were showing how the measurements of climate in the CO2 in the atmosphere is rising, but you said it hadn't made any difference to the temperature.
No, I didn't say that. I said all the COP meetings and everything made no difference to the rise of CO2. I haven't even mentioned temperatures and coming up to it. Okay, so you misunderstood.
Okay, the graphs of the action being taken to reduce CO2 was making no difference, is what you were saying.
No, all the political meetings in the world and all the conferences haven't even dented the curve of rising CO2.
But you know why that is, don't you? Because until we have got down to zero emissions, we will not see a reduction in anything.
I'll go into that.
The amount of carbon.
I think you're a great representative because you're asking really good questions, right? And I will be dealing with this.
Okay.
So please give me time to come up to the subject as I come up to see it.
Just to pick up
And you can bring
point,
this back.
40th of a millionth of 1 degree centigrade was your word, that it would make difference. That is because that's only taking us up to the point where we get down to net zero and then have to wait between 300 and 1,000 years before the carbon in the atmosphere starts to fall.
Yes, there's a lot of assumptions
that's why this
there.
is such a serious issue.
No,
What we're
but
running
I'm just saying how much. Yeah, fine. So let's accept that I don't think you're right, but let's accept you're right. Because I said, assuming they are right, it's still a 40th millionth of a degree.
Only until we reach the end of the 300 to 1,000 years, and then
in 1,000 years it'll get better. Well,
it'll take a long time, yes.
Yeah, and he's right. He's right. I'm accepting this for the moment. But you see what I mean? I call this a wormhole. Because
Can you hold the microphone?
what he's saying is that when I started the meeting tonight, I mentioned you'll save a 40th millionth of 1 degree if you actioned it here. And he's saying, well, that's right, because it take up 300 to 1,000 years before we see the effect, before we lose the CO2. Now, I did say this was according to their calculations. Okay? So, okay, that's why you'll only save a 40th. But things will improve, maybe in 1,000 years. Okay?
Can't wait.
Pardon?
Can't wait.
No, you can't wait. So I call it a wormhole because
It'll be worse if we do.
this is a good question from a knowledgeable person, and I wish I could spend the evening doing it, but I can't because I've got a capsule. I've got lots of surprises coming, I promise, right? The biggest one is CO2. I'm going to have to move on, okay? But I want you to come back on that.
And this is what I faced immediately after that talk when I got back to the UK and appeared on national television, GB News. And I had a small debate with the Stop Oil representative.
Well, I'm a person, by the way, that's been attacked by Just Stop Oil, and had one of their activists criminalised. He pleaded guilty to the assaults he made, and he threw a table at us. And I would like to ask Ben for a start. You wouldn't support that sort of action that caused him to have a year suspended sentence, a fine, and a criminal record.
So every action Just Stop Oil has done is non-violent and accountable. I have no idea what you're talking about. You'd have to explain a lot
Tristan
more.
Strange is the name. He's in record in Swindon, and he's Stop Oil, and so on. But you wouldn't agree with that sort of...
The group is called Just Stop Oil. To be honest, you have a questionable history.
All right, forget that.
You have a questionable
My question
history.
is, would you
fact.
support that sort of thing?
Just Stop Oil has never supported any violent action.
At all?
At all.
Right.
No violent action. And we've always been accountable.
Okay. The problem with the next question is your actions to stop the burning of all fossil fuels by 2030? Is that your aim?
Not only the burning, but also the extraction.
The extraction and burning.
And
so
for
we
the
stop
government,
the use of all fossil oils
for
by
the
2030.
for the government to draw up a legally binding plan to do so and work with international.
And by 2030, have no burning of fossil fuels of any sort.
Correct.
Thank you. Well, the Stonehenge was very appropriate to you then, because that was 5,000 years old, and that's what you'd take us back to. So the clothes you're in, you wouldn't have them.
That's not correct. They didn't have wind turbines, they didn't have solar, they didn't have hydro.
I'm sorry.
I believe that Britain is a strong enough nation, technologically developed, has a great workforce, and we can put together a plan to have a clean, renewable energy in the hands of people.
Today we have 4.8% in Britain of all the energy is solar and wind. 4.8%. And that's just part of it. Your clothes aren't just electricity. It's materials and so on. It comes from oil. You wouldn't have your phone. You wouldn't have the studio. You wouldn't have television. You wouldn't have anything if we went back to
pretty
that.
fast and loose with the facts.
No,
but I
I'm not.
agree. We can both agree that we're in an oil-based economy.
There to stop it. You are living in a dream world. If you think you've just denied the IPCC, yet you people.
I have not denied the IPCC. You've misrepresented them.
No,
I don't think he has, and he wouldn't be allowed to. We'd scrutinise it. He's given you data.
Okay.
You won't debate.
So you've just thrown away a report from the climate department, the climate group who look after and talk about climate within this country.
I encourage
You've thrown it away.
anyone at home.
Okay. So, he just threw away. I was trying to actually give him something he was disputing, and the answer was he throws it away. And somehow, in the next four and a bit years, we can go from 4.8% up to 100%. And by the way, all those need fossil fuels to make them anyway, and so on. And this is so ridiculous. And, I've been surrounded by Antifa. I've been threatened and all sorts of things. And all I talk about is climate. Yeah. So I just thought that again gives you a thing of what's going on and the ignorance I'm pounding away at. And why I showed you the little bit of the William Happer work is how I really try to simplify things for the public, because the key is to get the public understanding. And so that's it. And so there is only one more video to go because we're running out of time, maybe. And this is the most ridiculous interview I could have imagined anyone can have with anyone else. And this is Simply Sound. It's a podcast, and it's only five or 6 minutes long. But this podcast happened after the meeting, and it was a planned gotcha moment. And it involves William Happer, and it involves the most ignorant journalist you can imagine. Now, I wasn't ready for this, and I realized afterwards this is totally a gotcha moment for me. And so if you could we'll finish off with video 4, which again is just a podcast, but I promise you it's fascinating to listen to the conversation.
Hello and welcome along to another episode of Manx Radio's newscast. Now, a public meeting was held last night which saw a hefty turnout, with residents eager to hear the views of Paul Burgess, who was presenting what he describes as an alternative to net zero. Mr. Burgess also describes himself as a climatologist who spent his career looking at the extremes of weather. He claims the Isle of Man's attempts to reach net zero and tackle climate change is rubbish. I sat down with him when the meeting drew to a close. Let's start by just asking, why are you on the Isle of Man? What brought you here?
Well, it's very difficult to move the pendulum that's against me. And I live in a country of 60-odd million people. And we tried doing Leeds area, and then what happened was the Isle of Man came up, and people said to me, can you come and help us? And I thought about it, because it's quite a lot of time and work, because I made 3 or 4 videos before I even got here for the Isle of Man. But if I can have an influence in a small place like this, I have more effect.
Let's talk about the badge that you were wearing earlier, which says I heart CO2.
Yeah.
Would you call yourself a climate denier?
No, I think the climate denier are the alarmists, because if they think, I believe the climate is changing all the time. So in that sense, it is. In their sense, they actually think that you can dial a CO2 dial down or up and control the climate, and that controls the climate.
So you categorically say you're not a climate denier?
I can categorically say I'm a scientist that accepts what the climate is.
I just note in some of your YouTube videos, you're using graphs by the CO2 Coalition, which is recognized as a climate denial organization.
No, because you're defining them as climate deniers.
Well, the New York Times, Newsweek, The Independent, The Washington Post, and they're also locked in a Facebook battle, which keeps removing its content due to being classified as disinformation.
Yes, that's right, because journalism today is totally corrupted. Journalism today reports things like the Heathrow temperature record at 40.1, alongside the runway at Heathrow. So what you define, if I define you as an alien, it doesn't mean to say you're an alien.
Well, let's just look at some of the graphs that you've used. One of them from the CO2 Coalition, which you've described as fact in a very recent video, which says global temperatures changed dramatically during the past 10,000 years. Can you tell me who was tracking temperatures 10,000 years ago?
Yeah, I mean, basically, we can track temperatures by isotopes and by Greenland ice cores. So if you look at, I use different ones at the top of those graphs. If you look, so all of those are well-established scientific methods that were used. These are alarmist organizations.
Well, NASA says, and I'll quote, "Scientists have been building estimates of the Earth's average global temperature for more than a century using records from weather stations, but before 1880, there just wasn't enough data to make accurate calculations, resulting in uncertainties in these older records." So are you saying that NASA is lying?
Yeah, no, there's a different... Yes, actually, NASA do lie, but I don't know about that one. I can answer it. Look, let me explain something. You've got to estimate by what we call proxies. Now, the entire alarmism basis is based on a hockey stick going back 1,000 years. So the entire alarmism, the entire IPCC alarm, the whole industry is based on the 1998 hockey stick of 1,000-year temperatures done by tree rings, which is a totally corrupt bit of science. Does that mean to say they're lying? In actual fact, they did lie in that one. But that is the case. You have to use proxies when you're going back.
So just to bring back to the question, you are saying that NASA is lying?
No, you're trying to get me to say something. A lie.
You just said that NASA does lie.
No.
You did say NASA does lie.
NASA can lie. Yes, I'll give you an example.
So in this case, is NASA lying?
No, I don't know if they're lying in that because I don't know whether the person knew it or not, knew the truth or not. When someone makes a claim, that's not true, and that's not true claim. It doesn't mean to say they're lying. It means to say they don't know. So to accuse a person of lying, it means they've done it intentionally. Now, there are things that NASA has done intentionally that were not true, and they are lies, and that's how you define a lie.
Okay, let's move on. Greenpeace has conducted an undercover operation in the past which revealed that two prominent climate skeptics were available for hire by the hour to write reports casting doubt on the dangers posed by global warming. You're buying into those types of reports, aren't you?
No, I'm not. Who are these people? I buy into evidence and science. I don't even know who you're talking about. I mean, you can say things like that. Name the scientist and I'll tell you.
One is William Happer, one of the founders of the CO2 Coalition.
That's not true. Well, I know William Happer. No, that is not true.
So you dispute that?
Well, William Happer did that science there, which is accepted by the other side. What you've got is people, and journalists are very good at it, totally disrupting the information and misreporting all the time. So they'll say things which are totally untrue to get the headline in. So William Happer is a man of integrity, and he was the advisor to 3 American presidents. He's the one responsible for the work tonight I showed on CO2, and that work is agreed by the alarmists.
Let's just come to that. Happer is reported to have been appointed by Trump to counter evidence linking CO2 emissions to global warming.
Not true. He was appointed by Trump, and he didn't like Trump, actually, so he resigned. But he resigned because White House officials became skeptical of his plan would harm Trump's re-election. No. Now, let me explain something. William Happer is advised to advise on science with Trump. That's it, science. Right. William Happer knows the truth about CO2 because he's done the work. Now, the William Happer work is agreed by the other side, which I explained tonight. So what are you getting at here? He's done scientific work, agreed with observation by satellite. So you can't argue with it. It's been agreed by satellite. The other side accepted. All we disagree on between the two sides is the feedback, which we discussed tonight. That's all we have. What you're trying to do is...
William Happer is listed as a founder of CO2 Coalition, which we've covered, is a climate denial organisation.
No, you're talking absolute nonsense. This is totally illogical. Let me explain something. I can call you a Martian. Does that mean to say you're a Martian? No. So you use this word. You see, this is not scientific, what you're doing. You don't do ad hominem attacks, which is one stop after the other, one after the other here. That's not science. You're not dealing with the evidence. Deal with the evidence. You've named William Happer a completely man of high integrity, a really great scientist who's done work that the alarmists agree is correct, right? You're naming him. And how dare you do that?
You asked me to say...
The founder of Greenpeace is totally on my side because of Greenpeace and their corrupt ways of doing things and their corrupt ways of reporting things. You know that? Do you know who the founder was? Well, he left Greenpeace. The founder of Greenpeace, there was one or two people who founded it at the beginning. He founded it. He did great work with the whales and all that, right? He today he's a member of the CO2 Coalition as well, by the way, right? And he gives talks all over the world on it. And he is totally on my side. Totally. He argues we want more CO2 just like I do because it's so beneficial to the world. So
okay, let's just round up. Given there's so much discrepancy that we've covered here, you're saying one thing, some people say another thing.
No, I can't let you off with that. How dare you do that? Who are the some people? You have to name these things. Who? When you say some, there is. If you say,
well, we've just covered that. For example, CO2 Coalition is being recognised as a climate denial organisation, so that suggests that there are other people on the other side.
No, of course there are other people on the side.
So you do acknowledge that there are some people on the other side?
No, there's people on the other side, but unless you know what the subject is, it's very difficult. Generally, I acknowledge totally that there's a whole industry of alarmism on the other side. Yes, that's what I'm fighting. But what you're doing is pure personal attacks. What you're doing is so unscientific, so unfair, and so unreasonable. It's beyond belief. I hope you don't edit this, that's all. I just want every word repeated.
Right? Okay, so now that you have acknowledged that there are people on the other side...
Of course, I stood up tonight all time saying that people on the other side.
Okay, so why should anyone from the Isle of Man trust anything you're saying?
Because I've got the science. I've shown them the science. That's why. Because the science is there, which they can check against the sources. That's why. Because I've used NASA, I've used NOAA, I've used NASA, and I've used IPCC. Why should you claim? I'll give you an example. Are there any more floods in the world caused by mankind? Are there? IPCC said there's not in the latest report. Are there any more droughts in the world caused by mankind? IPCC say there's not. Do you believe IPCC? Are they some sort of alarmists? Are they denying?
You said earlier that IPCC is a intergovernmental organisation, so it's political.
Yes, it is. You're right. But it's trusted by the alarmist side, totally, right? I'm asking you a direct question, but you're cheating. You won't answer it.
This is an interview, not a debate. I'm the one asking the questions.
No, you're asking the questions, but then you're asking very smeared, incorrect questions. The fact is that the alarmists say, and spread alarm, based on floods, all these frequency, this and that and the other, forest fires, for example. The IPCC say that, right? So they say there's no more forest fires. They say the aridity that causes them, no mankind influence, right? So when the other side doesn't, I use their own data from the other side to challenge them. And the other side's an enormous industry, right, of alarmists. They teach kids in school and abuse the minds of kids in schools, teaching them unfounded science, right? So what you're doing is you're using the term climate denier defined by somebody else. So if I call you a Martian, all right then, you're a Martian. Well, I've now called you a Martian. Does that make you one?
I could be a Martian.
Pardon?
I could be a Martian.
Well, fine, let's accept you're a Martian. Then in the same way you're a Martian, I'm a denier.
Paul Burgess, thank you for joining us.
That's okay, bye.
That's the ignorance in his question, this sort of circular logic, was outstanding, I thought. And I came away from that one, really, that was immediately after the talk, that one. I hope I've shown in this podcast the sort of opposition and what's going on in the fight to try to get, my job is to get it to the general public, the lessons. I work my guts out to do that. And that's what I try to do. And in this podcast, I've tried to show, just what's involved in that and the personal attacks you get, which is why a lot of people, like the professor we contacted over the wind farms, just as, give me sanity, what do you think? He didn't want to be named, obviously. And because you just put your head above the parapet and bang. And my head's well above the parapet in the UK. And if you notice, the Stop Oil chap did start an ad hominem attack with, oh, you're well known for giving facts, etc. Yeah, I give the facts, so they throw them away. So that's where we are. That's where we are, Tom.
Okay, so yeah, I had a big smile on my face for much of this podcast. I think you are a hero. You are fighting the good fight. You're well informed, and you have the courage to fight in real life against these people. So I give you huge kudos for what you're doing. You have a YouTube channel. Do you want to mention the name of your YouTube channel?
Yeah, if you just go youtube.com/& climate realism, 2 words, climate realism, it'll take you to the channel. So that's the new tag I've got for the channel, which is much simpler. So it's /after.com & climate space realism will take you to my channel. And there's now over 150 climate videos. I tend to cover topics as they arise a lot because I'm fighting, like, our plan to put up the wind. I know the government, Treasury Department just admitted that it's going to cost hundreds of billions in the next 4 years to get this going, which we haven't got the money for. And so my job always is to expose these things. And that's what I do. And I take it head on.
I really appreciate your work. Any other points you'd like to make before we finish this one up?
Yeah, I suppose you've got to understand that on the other side, there is no argument. On the other side, there is no debate. They'll say they can't give you a debate because it gives you credibility. That's the coward's way. And anyone who does that, in my book, without skepticism, without debate, you haven't got science. So any climate scientist who claims that they are a scientist, that word scientist, and isn't willing to debate and so on, is bad. I recently did a television thing on air turbulence, clear air turbulence, where I showed the history of it, the reporting, because all turbulence has to be reported. So the Federal Aviation Authority have a record. So I showed there's no change over time. And a British university lecturer attacked me as being far right, blah, blah, blah. Yes. And so I tried to debate with him, and he refused to debate me. So then everyone else following him tried to debate him, and he just blanked them. He just stopped them, every one of them. So I did a program, how bad he was as a scientist and why I don't recognize him as a scientist, and challenged him to debate me. And this is Reading University, who are now becoming a new epicenter of alarmism. Yeah. And absolutely ridiculous. So I'm 79, so I don't have a career to ruin. Right. And I have 10 grandchildren to look after. That's why I'm doing it.
Fantastic. And just by the way, you have done this thing where you set up a table where people can come up in a public place at a university and ask you questions at a table. You've done some of that, right?
Oh, yeah. What happened was we've tried everything. So outside Oxford University, I gave a talk outside Oxford University about 15-minute cities. With about 8,000 to 10,000 people there, but we didn't have the speaker system. That got more than about 2,000, and that's on one of my videos. And then after that, a young lad came up with an idea. Why don't we put a table out and we print a big banner? It was a 10-foot banner, saying basically. You can't do this. Climate, what was it? Renewable energy is crap or something. Come and debate me. So it was right outside the door of Trinity College. We set up a table with a banner and people to debate me, trying to get professors or students, to debate me. And of course, I got a few odd ones, but a number of them said, "I'll debate you, but round the corner, not on camera." And then it was just a repetitive thing. That chap I showed you in that talk, who was trained by the Al Gore lot, he came up to me afterwards, after the whole talk. He was there the whole time. And one of his big arguments, it was there's no such thing as an urban heat island, that there's no such thing, right? And that went on for 8 minutes or so. I didn't want to take the time with it. But, how can you convince people? Yet the Met Office say London is 8 degrees warmer than the surrounds, And so I sat outside the college and it didn't work, basically. And I had a 19-year-old who was thinking about doing physics debate me on camera, but it wasn't a worthwhile debate because it's just an assertion they give you. They have no background. They have no knowledge. And so my my scope is wide, if you like. I'm involved in the engineering, and I'm in with the technology, and I'm involved with the science. I'm not an academic scientist. I had to do it in the real world. Yes, I uncovered the thing I did was I uncovered the effect of the sun cycle, the 11-year sun cycle, on what we call rain-fed river flows. Yeah, and recent work actually has been done on your podcast. Was about on the west coast of America, similar work, So it's nice to see that many years later. But I'm not an academic in that way. I don't claim to be. I didn't even like the word scientist for me. I'm called it by the television, so I just let it go. But but if I said I with the work I do, people don't understand what it is. So just like William Happer worked, I had to simplify some parts. To get the main message across, and William, by the way, liked that robot and everything. He thought it was brilliant. But it's a way of you've got to entertain when you educate as well. And that's what I try to do. And so, literally, there are 150 videos or more now on my channel. You can go to and look down and see the subjects. And I get 99% support on the television programs. I get almost 100% support. I mean, it must be 99.9% support. Yeah. So even in the Isle of Man with the public, I get over 99% support. But the government won't change. And that government only yesterday announced they're now trying to buy, because they're buying the wind farms. The government are doing it. It's not going to a commercial concern. So they can pretend it's going to work. And in the UK, the government invented a new load factor. They said in the future it should be 45%. So they went out with all the strike prices to the wind farm industry and said, right, these are the new strike prices based on 45% for onshore, right? And the wind farm industry, not one bid was accepted. Not one bid came in, right? So until they'd increased the price by 70%, did they then get it? So it's a laughingstock of the wind farm industry, the government, because they've taken it from the 28% by 70% increase is about the 45%. So they've compensated to let the fools think they're getting a 45%. Yeah, there's no evidence for that. They just said the models say because of improvements you should get that. And they've actually just compensated for it by saying, all right, let's pretend it's 45%, but you're going to have to pay us 70% more. This is the world I have to expose. The other one is our current government in their manifesto based their energy wind prices on the 2012, because in Britain we quote, when you get a strike price, it's the 2012 price you quote. And then you have to allow for the adjustments since. So they're not real prices, they're 2012 prices, but we accept that as the standard. Yeah. So they'll say it's £100, but really it's £150. So I then have to say, no, what you actually pay today is this, and so on. And these are simple mistakes. And I think what drives me mad most of all is like in the Isle of Man, it's straightforward and simple. And it still doesn't get through to them, to the government, to the people in power, and so that's where I am. And I think maybe it's just me taking out my frustration by making videos. I think the videos help me cope with life because that's it. It isn't that I'm brave or anything like that. It's just that, I'm past caring. I'm past offending people. If they're offended, too bad, But they'll try everything at me. I've been surrounded by Antifa. The police had to come and protect me and everything. And what was I talking on? 15-minute city. Yeah, that's all. Okay, well, thank you for exposing this. I hope it's been entertaining, if nothing else.
It has been very entertaining. Yeah, thanks for the great work, and keep it up. I appreciate it. Paul Burgess.
Thank you.
Yep, goodbye.